Hello, and thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos, an educator, writer, history nerd, and novice investigator. Each week on the show, we will learn about interesting parts of Texas history, from battles and historical figures to the odd and enchanted. Before listening to today's episode, be sure to grab the freebie listed on the show notes of today's podcast and follow along. Hey guys, and welcome back to Texas History for Kids. This is episode number 69. So today we're headed to the fields. And I'm not talking about the baseball fields, guys. No, we're headed to the strawberry and grape fields from long ago to listen to a voice that changed history. Imagine working in the hot sun all day with little water, no breaks, and barely any money. What if your voice didn't seem to matter to anyone around you? What if everyone told you that's just how things are? Well, one man didn't accept that. His name was César Chávez. César Chávez was born in 1927 in Yuma, Arizona. He was the son of Mexican-American farm workers, and life wasn't easy. His family lost their farm during the Great Depression and had to move around looking for work. Have you ever moved schools or homes? Now imagine moving over 30 times before the 8th grade. Yeah, that's what César did. But instead of getting bitter or angry about having to move and make new friends each time, César grew stronger. Without their farm, the Chávez family were forced to become migrant workers. A migrant worker is someone who moves from one place to another to find work, often doing things like picking fruits and vegetables on farms. They usually don't stay in one place very long because the work depends on the season. For example, they might be picking strawberries in California in the spring, then travel over to Texas in the summer to pick melons. Now, migrant workers often work very hard in the sun, and their jobs are important because they help bring food to grocery stores and tables all across the country. Now, because he was a migrant worker, César changed schools many times. He learned that not every student was treated the same. Did you know César Chávez didn't even like school as a kid? Well, it wasn't exactly because he didn't want to learn. It was because school didn't feel like a safe place or a welcoming area for him. Now at home, César Chávez spoke Spanish, just like the rest of his family. But at school, the teachers only spoke English, and Spanish wasn't allowed at all. If a student spoke Spanish, they could get in big trouble. And César once got hit on the knuckles with a ruler just for saying something in Spanish. Ouch. He also noticed that some schools were segregated. That means that kids of different races were forced to go to separate schools. And when César was in a mixed classroom, he said he felt like a monkey in a cage. He was stared at. He was left out of activities, and he was treated unfairly. He remembered hearing mean, racist remarks from other kids, and even seeing signs around town that said things like, "Whites only." That meant that people like him weren't welcome in certain stores, bathrooms, or restaurants. Now, César and his brother Richard went to 37 different schools as they moved around looking for farm work. And honestly, César felt like school had nothing to do with his life as a farm worker. In his eyes, it didn't help him or his family survive. So in 1942, after finishing the 8th grade, César left school for good. His dad had been in an accident, and he didn't want his mom to have to work in the fields. So instead of going to high school, César joined his family in the fields, picking crops to help make ends meet. But even though his time in school was rough, what he learned from those experiences helped shape him into the leader that he would later become. He joined the United States Navy, which was then segregated, in 1946 at the age of 19, and he served for 2 years. But when he got out of the service, he noticed something was happening with the migrant workers, and he wasn't too happy about what he was seeing. He asked himself several questions, like, why were workers picking grapes and strawberries all day, but getting paid next to nothing? So let's go ahead and talk money for a second, guys. Back when César Chávez was working in the fields, migrant farm workers earned very little money. Sometimes as low as just $1 for a whole hour of work. And if they were being paid by the pound or the box, which was some cases, they had to work even faster to earn just a few dollars a day. So I'm talking about a day, friends. To put that into perspective, that's less than what a kid's meal costs today. Imagine working all day in the hot sun, picking grapes or lettuce or strawberries, and only having enough money to buy one small lunch for your family, if even that. And guess what? Most workers didn't even get lunch breaks, forget about health insurance, or even clean drinking water in the fields. That's one of the big reasons César Chávez and the United Farm Workers fought for better pay and safer working conditions, because hard work should always come with fair treatment. Another thing César noticed was the migrants were getting sick from pesticides. Much like the pecan shellers of San Antonio that I spoke about in episode 16 of this podcast, these working conditions were becoming deadly. So what are pesticides? Well, on farms, workers use pesticides, which are chemicals that kill bugs and pests so that crops can grow better. Sounds helpful, right? But here's a problem. Pesticides can also be very harmful to people, especially to farm workers who are around them all the time. If they breathe in the chemicals, get them on their skin, or accidentally swallow it, it can make them very sick. So some of the health problems pesticides include are headaches, skin rashes, can cause breathing problems, especially if somebody already has a breathing issue. It can cause upset stomach and long-term health issues like cancer or even damage to the brain. And back in César Chávez's time, most farm workers didn't get protective gear like gloves or masks. They used their hands. There also weren't many rules about using pesticides safely, so people often worked in fields that had just been sprayed. Now, César knew this wasn't fair. He believed farm workers deserved safe places to work, just like everyone else. That's why part of his fight was to make sure pesticides were used safely, or not at all. So in 1962, César co-founded a group called the National Farm Workers Association, which later became known as the United Farm Workers, or UFW. And guess what? His partner in his fight was another amazing leader named Dolores Huerta. We'll talk about her more in another episode. César Chávez believed in non-violence. That means no fighting, no hurting, no yelling, just peaceful actions to bring change. And get this, he didn't just talk about peace. He went on to do something called a fast. That's when someone chooses not to eat for a certain number of days, usually bringing attention to a cause. So in 1968, César went on a 25-day fast. He only drank water to show that his fight for justice didn't have to be violent. He did it again in 1972 for 24 days and one more time in 1988 for 36 days straight. So why did he do that? Here's what he said.
The union's survival, its very existence, sent out a signal to all Hispanics that we were fighting for our dignity, that we were challenging and overcoming injustice, that we were empowering the least educated among us, the poorest among us.
Wow, that's powerful, right? César wanted to remind everyone, even when times were hard, that you can fight for what's right without hurting other people. His peaceful courage inspired people across the United States, and it's part of why his legacy still lives on today. One of the biggest events that he was a part of was called the Delano Grape Strike. For 5 whole years, César and thousands of workers refused to pick grapes until they got better pay and conditions. During the Delano Grape Strike, workers chose not to work, instead protesting against the conditions they were working in and demanding better treatment. So what did they do? Well, it all started when grape pickers in Delano, California decided they had had enough. They were working long hours under the hot sun, getting very little money, and didn't even have health insurance or job protection. They didn't even have bathrooms in the fields. These workers were tired, sick, and struggling just to feed their families. So César helped to organize a strike. That means the workers stopped picking grapes. It wasn't just about money. It was about being fair. César believed that everyone deserved to be treated with respect, no matter what kind of job they had. He called it a moral fight, not just about laws, but about what's right and what's wrong. For 5 years, thousands of workers stood together. And guess what? People all across the country joined in by refusing to buy grapes until things change. So what did that mean for kids who loved grapes? Well, without workers to pick the grapes, harvesting stopped, and the grapes either went bad or the farmers would have to find someone else to pay to do that job. Would you be able to go without grapes for 5 years? For a cause that you believed in, I believe you would. He fasted. He marched 300 miles and even met with United States presidents to fight for farm workers' rights. By the 1970s, things began to change. Workers gained better pay, bathrooms in the fields, clean water, and the right to join unions. But César didn't stop. He kept going well until his death in 1993. César Chávez passed away peacefully in his sleep on April 23, 1993, near Yuma, Arizona, not far from the small family farm where he was born over 66 years earlier. At the time, César was still working hard for farm workers. He was in Arizona helping with a court case where a big vegetable company was suing the United Farm Workers, the very union César helped to build. The company wanted money because of a boycott from the 1980s, when farm workers asked people not to buy their lettuce to protest unfair working conditions. Even though César was tired and not feeling well, he kept showing up to court every day. His friend and the next president of the UFW, Arturo Rodriguez, said, César gave his last ounce of strength defending the farm workers. He died standing up for their right to speak out. On the evening of April 22nd, César drove around neighborhoods in Yuma, where he had lived as a child. He visited old friends and stayed at the home of Doña Maria Joao, a former farm worker who had been his friend for many years. Now that night, he ate dinner, he held a short meeting with his team, and he reminded everyone to take care of themselves. Even though he was exhausted from a long day in court, he was in good spirits. He went to bed around 10 p.m. and was seen reading in his room. The next morning, when he didn't come out by 9 a.m., his friends went to check on him. They found that César had passed away peacefully in his sleep during the night. He was lying on his back with a gentle smile on his face. In his hand was a book about Native American crafts, something he loved learning about. Even in his final moments, César Chávez was doing what he always did, staying close to people, fighting for justice, and never giving up on the farm workers he loved so much. In 2014, President Barack Obama even declared March 31st, which is César's birthday, and today is March 31st, César Chávez Day. So happy birthday, César Chávez. And I created today's episode just for you on your birthday. César wasn't the loudest. He didn't shout or demand attention. He wasn't physical and yelling at everybody. But his quiet strength did make a powerful noise. He showed the world that every voice matters, especially when it speaks up for what's right. So next time you bite into a grape or strawberry, remember the man who stood up for the hands that helped to pick it. That's all for today's episode, guys. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the history you probably never learned about in school. And if you did, maybe not to the extent that we learned about it today. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next week where we'll uncover more Texas mysteries and legends. And remember, today is history in the making.